What if a king fell in love with a servant, only to discover she was hiding a secret that could change everything? In this gripping tale set in 19th century Romania, passion collides with duty, and a forbidden love faces its greatest test. Will their love conquer all, or will the weight of the crown crush their dreams? Stay tuned to find out. And hey, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and why you love our stories. Your support means the world to us. In the majestic Bran Castle, nestled deep within the Romanian Carpathians, King Mihai's footsteps echoed through the empty corridors. At 42, his once proud shoulders now carried the weight of 5 years of solitude since his beloved wife's passing. The castle's stone walls, adorned with crimson velvet tapestries and ancestral portraits, seemed to amplify his loneliness. Even the servants' whispers couldn't penetrate the thick veil of melancholy that surrounded him. The morning light filtered through the Gothic windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors where he once danced with his queen. On a crisp autumn morning, the castle's routine was disrupted by the arrival of Ana, a new garden servant. At 36, she possessed a quiet grace that immediately caught the attention of the household. Her simple linen dress couldn't hide her natural elegance as she moved through the overgrown gardens, her gentle hands already planning the resurrection of the once magnificent grounds. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Popescu, watched with keen interest as Ana demonstrated an unusual knowledge of rare flowers and sophisticated gardening techniques. "These Damascus roses," Ana explained to Mrs. Popescu, her fingers gently touching the withered petals. "They need special care to thrive in our climate. With proper attention, they'll bloom again by spring." Her voice carried a refined quality that made the housekeeper raise an eyebrow in curiosity. From his study window, King Mihai found himself drawn to the mysterious new arrival. There was something different about the way she tended to the gardens, speaking to the flowers softly as if sharing ancient secrets. Her dark hair, tied back simply with a ribbon, caught the morning light in a way that reminded him of the happiness he'd once known. He observed how the other servants naturally gravitated toward her, drawn by her warm smile and gentle demeanor. The gardens, which had fallen into neglect during his years of mourning, began to transform under Ana's care. She worked tirelessly, planting red carnations and pruning old rose bushes, seemingly oblivious to the pair of eyes that followed her movements from above. The king noticed how she would pause occasionally to admire the castle's Gothic architecture, her gaze lingering on the intricate stone carvings with an appreciation that seemed unusual for a simple servant. One golden afternoon, as the autumn sun cast long shadows across the grounds, King Mihai finally found the courage to venture into the gardens. Ana was arranging a bed of carnations, their rich red petals matching the color that rose to her cheeks when she noticed his approach. Following the strict protocols of Victorian Romania, she immediately dropped into a deep curtsy, but not before the king caught a glimpse of something in her eyes. A flash of recognition, perhaps, or something deeper that he couldn't quite name. "Your Majesty," she murmured, her voice carrying a musical quality that stirred something long dormant in his heart. The king found himself struggling to maintain his usual regal composure. "Please, rise," he said, his voice rougher than intended from lack of use. "I've been watching the transformation you've brought to these gardens. They haven't looked this alive in years." Ana stood gracefully, keeping her eyes respectfully lowered. "The gardens merely needed someone to remember their potential, Your Majesty. Everything beautiful requires patience and care to flourish again." The king caught the double meaning in her words, and something shifted in the air between them. "You speak as if you understand more than just gardens, miss." "Ana, Your Majesty. Simply Ana," she replied, finally meeting his gaze with eyes that held both wisdom and something akin to sorrow. Their conversation flowed with surprising ease as they walked through the gardens. Ana spoke of the traditional Romanian flowers she planned to introduce, crocuses that would break through the spring snow, and evening primrose that would perfume the summer nights. The king found himself sharing memories of how his late wife had loved the gardens, something he hadn't spoken of in years. "She would have appreciated your vision," he said softly, stopping beside a marble fountain. These gardens were her sanctuary. Ana's response was gentle but assured. Sometimes, Your Majesty, the things we think are lost forever are simply waiting to be rediscovered. As they continued their walk, servants passing by tried to hide their surprise at seeing the king engaged in such animated conversation. He asked about her background, and Ana spoke of a small village near Moieciu, describing the traditional wool weaving and sheep herding with such detail that it painted a vivid picture of rural Romanian life. Yet there were moments when her knowledge seemed to extend beyond what one might expect from a village gardener. She referenced classical poetry when describing the relationship between flowers and seasons, and her understanding of formal garden design hinted at an education unusual for her stated background. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the castle grounds, King Mihai found himself reluctant to leave. There was something about Ana's presence that made the weight of his crown feel lighter, the burden of his grief less overwhelming. Yet as he turned to go, he caught a glimpse of her face in profile, and for a moment she seemed to wear an expression of such profound sadness that it mirrored his own. "Until tomorrow, Miss Ana," he said, the formal address feeling somehow inadequate. "Until tomorrow, Your Majesty," she replied, curtsying once more. As she straightened, their eyes met briefly, and both felt the whisper of something dangerous and wonderful beginning to take root. Unknown to him, Ana clutched a hidden medallion beneath her simple dress once he departed, its weight a constant reminder of the secrets she carried. As she watched the king's retreating figure, she whispered a prayer to the evening air, knowing that their brief encounter had set in motion events that would forever change both their lives. The medallion's engraved surface pressed against her skin, carrying the weight of a past she couldn't escape and a future she dared not imagine. As autumn deepened in the Romanian countryside, the gardens of Bran Castle continued their transformation under Ana's careful guidance. King Mihai found himself drawn more frequently to the grounds, his daily walks becoming a cherished ritual. The crisp air carried the scent of late-blooming lavender and the earthy aroma of fallen leaves, a symphony of nature that seemed to awaken something long dormant within him. On one such afternoon, as the sun painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Mihai spotted Ana tending to a patch of chrysanthemums. Her graceful movements caught his eye, and he approached, his footsteps crunching softly on the gravel path. "Your Majesty," Ana greeted him with a curtsy, her eyes meeting his briefly before lowering respectfully. "The gardens welcome your presence." Mihai smiled, a rare expression that softened his features. "And I welcome the peace they bring, thanks to your skilled hands, Miss Ana." As they walked side by side, Ana began to share stories of her supposed home village, Moieciu. Her words painted vivid pictures of life in rural Romania, of traditions passed down through generations. "In autumn," she explained, her voice taking on a lyrical quality, "the village comes alive with the Festivalul Branzei și al Țuicii. The air fills with the aroma of fresh cheeses and the warmth of țuică. Families gather to celebrate the harvest, sharing meals that have been prepared the same way for centuries." Mihai listened, enraptured. "It sounds wonderful. I confess, it's been too long since I've ventured beyond these castle walls to experience such simple joys." Ana's eyes sparkled with an idea. "Perhaps, Your Majesty, we could bring a taste of that celebration here. With your permission, I could arrange a small display of traditional crafts and foods in the garden. It might bring a bit of that village spirit to the castle." The king considered her suggestion, intrigued by the possibility. "That's an excellent idea, Miss Ana. Please make the arrangements. I look forward to seeing your vision come to life." As they continued their walk, Mihai found himself opening up about his own memories. He spoke of his childhood, of summers spent exploring the Carpathian forests and winters huddled by roaring fires, listening to tales of Vlad the Impaler and other Romanian legends. "There was one story," he reminisced, his voice taking on a wistful tone, "about a princess who disguised herself as a commoner to find true love. I always wondered if such a thing were possible, to set aside one's station and be seen for who you truly are." Ana's breath caught for a moment, her hand unconsciously moving to the hidden medallion beneath her dress. "Perhaps, Your Majesty, the truest self is the one we reveal when we're free from the expectations of our station." Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, The air between them seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. Mihai reached out, his fingers brushing against Ana's hand in a gesture that was both innocent and fraught with meaning. "You speak with such wisdom, Miss Ana," he said softly. "I find myself curious about the life that has brought you to my castle." Ana's smile held a hint of sadness. "Life has many twists and turns, Your Majesty. Sometimes we find ourselves on paths we never expected, but perhaps exactly where we need to be." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garden, Mihai reluctantly prepared to take his leave. "Thank you for your company, Miss Ana. Our conversations, they bring light to my days." Ana curtsied once more, her eyes meeting his with a warmth that sent a flutter through his heart. "The pleasure is mine, Your Majesty. Until tomorrow." Later that evening, in the privacy of his chambers, Mihai found himself unable to shake thoughts of Ana from his mind. He stood by the window, gazing out at the moonlit gardens where they had walked together. Something about her stirred feelings he thought long buried with his late wife. Meanwhile, in her modest quarters near the servants' wing, Ana sat at a small desk, penning a letter by candlelight. Her hand trembled slightly as she wrote, "Dearest friend, I find myself in a situation I never anticipated. The king is not as the rumors portrayed him. He is kind, thoughtful, and carries a sadness that mirrors my own. Each day I feel the weight of my deception grow heavier. How can I continue this charade when my heart—" She paused, a tear falling onto the parchment, blurring the ink. With a heavy sigh, she folded the unfinished letter and tucked it away in a hidden compartment of her trunk, alongside a collection of finely bound books and a small portrait, items that seemed out of place among a servant's meager possessions. As the castle settled into the quiet of night, both Mihai and Ana lay awake, their thoughts filled with the other, each wrestling with feelings that threatened to upend the careful balance of their lives. The king, for the first time in years, felt the stirring of hope, a dangerous, exhilarating sensation that both thrilled and terrified him. Ana, burdened by her secrets, found herself torn between the growing affection she felt for Mihai and the fear of what would happen if her true identity were revealed. The following days saw a flurry of activity in the castle gardens as Ana's plan for a traditional Romanian harvest celebration took shape. Servants bustled about, setting up displays of intricate lacework, hand-carved wooden figurines, and vibrant woven tapestries. The air filled with the mouth-watering aromas of kozonak, sarmal, and other traditional dishes prepared under Ana's guidance. On the day of the celebration, Mihai descended to the gardens, his heart lightening at the sight of the colorful displays and the sound of traditional music floating on the breeze. He found Ana overseeing the final preparations, her face glowing with pride and excitement. "Your Majesty," she greeted him, her eyes shining. "Welcome to our little piece of Romanian tradition." As they walked together through the displays, Mihai found himself captivated, not just by the crafts and foods, but by the joy radiating from Ana as she explained the significance of each item. Her knowledge seemed to extend far beyond what one might expect from a village gardener, but Mihai was too enchanted to question it. The day passed in a whirl of colors, tastes, and laughter, sounds that had been absent from the castle for far too long. As evening fell and lanterns were lit throughout the gardens, Mihai found a moment alone with Ana near the fragrant lavender beds. "Miss Ana," he began, his voice low and intimate, "I cannot thank you enough for bringing this celebration to life. It's as if you've awakened not just the gardens, but the very spirit of this castle." Ana's cheeks flushed with pleasure. "I'm glad it brings you joy, Your Majesty. These traditions, they're a part of who we are as Romanians. They connect us to our past and to each other." Impulsively, Mihai reached out and took her hand in his. "Indeed they do. And I find myself feeling more connected than I have in years, thanks to you." The moment hung between them, fraught with unspoken emotions. Ana's eyes widened, her breath catching as she felt the warmth of Mihai's hand. For a heartbeat, it seemed as though the king might pull her closer, but the spell was broken by the approach of Mrs. Popescu, come to inquire about the evening's schedule. As Ana turned to address the housekeeper's questions, Mihai retreated, his mind awhirl with conflicting thoughts and emotions. He knew that his growing feelings for Ana were dangerous. She was a servant, and he was king. Yet he couldn't deny the way his heart lightened in her presence, the way she seemed to understand him in a way no one had since his wife's passing. Little did he know that Ana was equally torn, her growing affection for the king warring with the weight of her secrets. As the celebration wound down and the castle settled into night, both Mihai and Ana lay awake, their thoughts filled with the other, each wondering what the future might hold and whether they dared to hope for something more. As the crisp autumn air gave way to the first whispers of winter, Bran Castle found itself enveloped in a newfound warmth that seemed to emanate from the blossoming friendship between King Mihai and Ana. Their daily encounters in the gardens had become a source of quiet joy for both, a respite from the weight of their respective burdens. One particularly chilly morning, Mihai made his way to the gardens, a carefully wrapped package tucked under his arm. He found Ana kneeling beside a bed of late-blooming asters, her breath visible in the cold air as she worked. "Miss Ana," he called softly, causing her to look up with a smile that warmed him more than any fire could. "Your Majesty," she replied, rising to curtsy. "You're out early today." Mihai nodded, suddenly feeling uncharacteristically nervous. "I have something for you," he said, extending the package. "A token of my appreciation for all you've done for the castle. And for me." Ana's eyes widened as she carefully unwrapped the gift, revealing a beautifully embroidered shawl in rich shades of blue and gold. Her fingers traced the intricate patterns, a look of wonder on her face. "It's exquisite," she breathed, her voice tinged with emotion. "But Your Majesty, I couldn't possibly—" "Please," Mihai interrupted gently. "It would honor me if you would accept it. The nights are growing colder, and I would hate to see you catch a chill." Their eyes met, and for a moment the air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken feelings. Ana draped the shawl around her shoulders, the fine fabric a stark contrast to her simple work dress. "Thank you," she said softly. "I shall treasure it always." As they walked through the gardens together, Mihai found himself opening up more than he had in years. He spoke of his late wife, of the loneliness that had consumed him after her passing, and of the unexpected lightness he'd found in Ana's company. "It's as if you've brought color back into a world that had faded to gray," he confessed, his voice low and intimate. Ana's cheeks flushed, and she turned to face him, her eyes shining with a mix of joy and something deeper, more complex. "Your Majesty, I—" But before she could finish, they were interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Mrs. Popescu rounded the corner, her face pinched with concern. "Your Majesty, forgive the interruption," she said, bobbing a quick curtsy. "But there's a matter that requires your immediate attention in the Great Hall." Mihai nodded, reluctantly turning away from Ana. "Of course, I'll be there shortly." He looked back at Ana, his eyes conveying what words could not. "Until later, Miss Ana." As Mihai strode away, Ana clutched the shawl tighter around her shoulders, her heart racing. She hadn't missed the whispers and sidelong glances from the other servants, the raised eyebrows at the king's frequent visits to the gardens. Her growing closeness to Mihai was becoming impossible to ignore, and with it, the danger of her secret being discovered. Later that evening, as Ana prepared for bed in her small servants' quarters, a knock at her door startled her. She opened it to find Elena, one of the younger maids, looking anxious. "Ana," Elena whispered, glancing nervously down the hallway. "There's talk among the servants. A rider arrived today, asking strange questions about new faces in the castle." Ana's blood ran cold. "What kind of questions?" she asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. Elena shrugged. "I'm not sure of the details, but Mrs. Popescu seemed troubled. The rider, they say he wore the crest of a noble house from Bukovina." Ana's hand instinctively went to the hidden medallion around her neck. "Thank you for telling me, Elena," she said, forcing a smile. "I'm sure it's nothing to worry about." But as she closed the door and leaned against it, Ana's mind raced with fear. Could it be that Baron Vlaicu had finally tracked her down? The thought of her past catching up with her, of losing the peace she'd found here, and more importantly, of hurting Mihai, filled her with dread. Meanwhile, in his private study, Mihai sat before a crackling fire, a glass of aged suica in hand. His thoughts, as they often did these days, drifted to Ana. There was something about her that both intrigued and unsettled him. Her knowledge, her bearing. At times it seemed at odds with her supposed background. A knock at the door interrupted his musings. "Enter," he called, straightening in his chair. His trusted advisor Vasile, a man in his early 60s with a neatly trimmed salt-and-pepper beard, stepped into the room. "Your Majesty," he began, his tone cautious. "I hope I'm not disturbing you, but there's a matter I feel we must discuss." Mihai gestured for him to continue, a sense of unease growing in his chest. Vasile cleared his throat. "It's about the new gardener, Ana. There have been whispers among the staff and some of the nobles. Your frequent visits to the gardens have not gone unnoticed." Mihai's jaw tightened. "And what of it? Am I not allowed to take an interest in the restoration of my own castle grounds?" "Of course, Your Majesty," Vasile said quickly. "But there are concerns about the propriety of your relationship with a servant. And there are other matters that trouble me. The writer who arrived today, for instance. He asked very specific questions about recent additions to the castle staff." Mihai leaned forward, his interest piqued. "What kind of questions?" Vasile hesitated before continuing. "He seemed particularly interested in anyone who might have arrived from the Bukovina region. And there's something else." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small piece of paper. "This was found in the village. It appears to be a portion of a wanted notice, though most of it is too damaged to read." Mihai took the paper, his eyes scanning the few legible words. "Countess, Bukovina, reward for information." A chill ran down his spine as he looked back at Vasile. "What are you suggesting?" Vasile's voice was gentle but firm. "I suggest nothing, Your Majesty. I merely bring this to your attention out of concern for your well-being and the stability of the castle. Perhaps it would be wise to make some discreet inquiries about Miss Ana's background." Mihai nodded slowly, his mind a whirl of conflicting emotions. "Thank you, Vasile. You may go." As the door closed behind his advisor, Mihai turned back to the fire, the partially burned notice clutched in his hand. The warmth he had felt earlier when giving Ana the shawl now seemed distant, replaced by a cold knot of doubt in his stomach. Could it be possible? Could Ana be hiding something, or pretending to be someone she was not? The very thought felt like a betrayal, both of her and of the feelings he had allowed himself to nurture. Yet as he gazed into the dancing flames, Mihai couldn't shake the memory of the sadness he sometimes glimpsed in Ana's eyes, or the way she sometimes spoke of things that seemed beyond the knowledge of a simple village girl. There were pieces to this puzzle that didn't quite fit, and for the first time since Ana's arrival, Mihai found himself questioning everything. As the clock struck midnight, both Mihai and Ana lay awake in their respective chambers, each grappling with secrets and fears that threatened to unravel the delicate connection they had formed. The castle, once again, seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the dawn that would bring with it new challenges and the potential for both heartbreak and redemption. In the gardens, the last of the autumn flowers bowed their heads under the weight of the first frost, a silent testament to the changing of seasons and the inevitable transformations that lay ahead for all who dwelled within Bran Castle's ancient walls. The day of the Svantalandre celebration arrived, bringing with it a flurry of activity to Bran Castle. The air was crisp with the promise of winter, but inside, warmth and excitement filled every corner. Servants bustled about, hanging garlands of evergreen and dried herbs, their scent mingling with the aroma of mulled wine and freshly baked kozanak. Ana had been up since dawn, overseeing the preparations with a nervous energy that belied her outward calm. She wore the shawl King Mihai had given her, its rich blue fabric a stark contrast to her simple dress. As she adjusted a wreath of holly, she caught sight of her reflection in a polished silver tray. For a moment she barely recognized herself. The servant girl staring back at her seemed a far cry from the countess she had once been. "You've outdone yourself, Miss Ana," came a deep voice from behind her. She turned to find King Mihai, resplendent in formal attire, his eyes warm as they took in the transformed great hall. Ana curtsied deeply, her heart racing. "Your Majesty." I hope the decorations meet with your approval. Mihai stepped closer, his voice low and intimate. They're perfect, as is the architect of this transformation. His gaze lingered on her face, searching for something, though what, Ana couldn't be sure. Before she could respond, the sound of arriving guests broke the moment. Mihai straightened, his kingly mask slipping back into place. I should greet our visitors. Will you join the celebrations later? Of course, Your Majesty, Ana replied, trying to ignore the flutter in her chest. I wouldn't miss it for the world. As Mihai moved away to welcome his noble guests, Ana retreated to the kitchens, her mind awhirl. The growing closeness between them was becoming harder to ignore and harder to reconcile with the secret she carried. The evening progressed in a whirl of color and sound. Violins played traditional Romanian melodies, their haunting strains weaving through the laughter and chatter of the assembled guests. Noble ladies in elaborate gowns twirled with dashing gentlemen, while servants wove through the crowd with trays of delicacies and goblets of steaming mulled wine. Ana found herself swept up in the festivities, sharing dances with some of the younger servants and even a few of the more progressive nobles who didn't mind partnering with a mere gardener. Yet her eyes constantly sought out Mihai, drawn to his commanding presence as he moved among his guests. As the night wore on, Ana slipped away from the main hall, seeking a moment of quiet in one of the smaller antechambers. She stood by a window, gazing out at the moonlit gardens, lost in thought. Seeking refuge from your own success? Mihai's voice startled her from her reverie. She turned to find him standing in the doorway, a slight smile playing on his lips. Your Majesty, she said, dropping into a curtsy. I was just taking a moment to catch my breath. Mihai crossed the room to join her at the window. It is a bit overwhelming, isn't it? All this revelry. He paused, his eyes searching her face. You've brought life back to this castle, Ana, in more ways than one. The use of her name without title sent a shiver down Ana's spine. I'm glad I could be of service, Your Majesty. Mihai took a step closer, the space between them charged with unspoken tension. Mihai, he said softly, when we're alone like this, I'd like you to call me Mihai. Ana's breath caught in her throat. I'm not sure that would be appropriate, Your Majesty. And what of this is appropriate? Mihai asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He reached out, his fingers brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. The way my heart races when you're near, the way your smile lights up these dark halls? Before Ana could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps broke the spell. They stepped apart just as Elena, one of the young maids, appeared in the doorway. Oh, Your Majesty, Miss Ana. I'm so sorry to interrupt, Elena stammered, her face flushing. But Mrs. Popescu is looking for you, Miss Ana. Something about the dessert arrangements. Ana nodded, grateful for the interruption even as her heart ached at the lost moment. Of course, I'll be right there. She turned back to Mihai, curtsying once more. If you'll excuse me, Your Majesty. As she hurried away, Ana's mind was in turmoil. The growing intimacy between her and Mihai was becoming impossible to ignore, and increasingly dangerous. How could she continue this charade, knowing the pain her deception would ultimately cause? Meanwhile, Mihai returned to the great hall, his thoughts equally troubled. The connection he felt with Ana was unlike anything he'd experienced since his wife's death. And yet, the nagging doubts planted by Vasilei's warnings refused to be silenced. Who was Ana really, and what secrets might she be hiding? As the night wore on, the traditional games and rituals of Sfântul Andrei began. Young women placed sprigs of basil under their pillows, hoping to dream of their future husbands. Candles were lit in hollowed-out pumpkins, their flickering flames said to ward off evil spirits. Mihai found himself drawn once more to Ana, who was helping a group of giggling servant girls with their basil sprigs. He approached, causing a hush to fall over the small gathering. Your Majesty, Ana said, rising to greet him. We were just discussing the old traditions. Do you participate in any of the Sfântul Andrei rituals? Mihai smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes. I'm afraid my days of placing basil under my pillow are long past. But perhaps you'd indulge me in another tradition. He held out his hand. A dance? A collective gasp went up from the assembled servants. Ana hesitated for a moment before placing her hand in his. "It would be my honor, Your Majesty." As Mihai led Ana to the center of the hall, the musician struck up a slow, romantic doina. The other dancers parted, creating a circle around the king and the gardener. Ana could feel the weight of every eye in the room upon them as Mihai drew her close. "Everyone's staring," she whispered, her cheeks flushing. "Let them," Mihai replied, his voice low and intense. "In this moment, there is only you and me." As they moved together, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. Ana could feel the strength in Mihai's arms, the warmth of his body so close to hers. For a few precious minutes, she allowed herself to forget the lies, the danger, the impossibility of their situation. She was simply a woman in the arms of a man who made her heart soar. But as the dance came to an end and reality crashed back in, Ana felt a wave of guilt wash over her. She stepped back from Mihai, curtsying deeply. "Thank you for the dance, Your Majesty," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "If you'll excuse me, I should see to the other guests." Before Mihai could respond, Ana hurried away, leaving him standing alone in the center of the hall. He watched her go, a mix of longing and frustration etched on his face. As the night drew to a close and the guests began to depart, Ana found herself once more in the quiet of the gardens. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the frost-covered ground. She clutched Mihai's shawl tightly around her shoulders, tears pricking at her eyes. "Oh, Ana," came a soft voice. She turned to find Elena approaching, concern written across her young face. "Are you all right?" Ana forced a smile. "Of course. Just a bit overwhelmed by the festivities, I suppose." Elena hesitated before speaking again. "Ana, people are talking about you and the king. Is there something going on?" Anna's heart clenched. "No, Elena, there's nothing going on. The king is simply kind. That's all." But even as she spoke the words, Ana knew they were a lie. Something was happening between her and Mihai. Something powerful and dangerous and utterly impossible. As she made her way back to her small room in the servants' quarters, Anna's mind was made up. She would have to leave Bran Castle. It was the only way to protect Mihai from the truth of her deception, and to protect her own heart from the pain of loving someone she could never truly have. Little did she know that at that very moment, in a tavern in the nearby village, a cloaked figure was asking questions about the castle's newest servant. The net was closing in, and time was running out for Ana to make her escape before her past caught up with her, and threatened to destroy everything she had come to hold dear. The morning after the Sfântul Andrei celebration dawned cold and gray, a thick mist clinging to the castle grounds. Ana rose early, her heart heavy with the decision she had made the night before. As she dressed, her fingers lingered on the fine shawl Mihai had given her, a bittersweet reminder of what she was leaving behind. She had just finished packing her meager belongings when a sharp knock at her door made her jump. Opening it, she found Mrs. Popescu, the housekeeper, her face pinched with concern. "Ana, dear," she said, her voice low and urgent, "you're needed in the king's study immediately. There's a situation." Anna's heart raced as she followed Mrs. Popescu through the winding corridors of the castle. What could have happened? Had her secret somehow been discovered? As they approached the study, Ana could hear raised voices from within. She recognized Mihai's deep tones, tinged with anger, and another voice, one that made her blood run cold. Mrs. Popescu knocked softly, and the voices fell silent. "Enter," came Mihai's curt command. As Ana stepped into the room, her worst fears were confirmed. There, standing before Mihai's desk, was Baron Vlaicu. He turned as she entered, his cold eyes lighting up with triumphant recognition. "Ah, there she is," Vlaicu said, his voice dripping with false charm. "The elusive Countess Anastasia of Bukovina. Or should I say, Ana the gardener." Ana felt the room spin around her. She gripped the door frame for support, her eyes darting to Mihai. His face was a mask of shock and confusion. "Ana," Mihai said, his voice strained, "what is the meaning of this?" Before Ana could respond, Vlaicu stepped forward. Allow me to enlighten you, your majesty. This woman is not who she claims to be. She is Countess Anastasia of Bukovina, my betrothed, who fled our impending marriage some months ago. Ana straightened, drawing on every ounce of the noble bearing she had tried so hard to suppress. That is not the whole truth, Baron Vlaicu, and you know it. Mihai raised a hand, silencing them both. I want to hear this from you, Ana. Or should I say, Countess Anastasia? The pain in his eyes was almost more than Ana could bear. She took a deep breath, knowing that everything hung on what she said next. Your Majesty, Mihai, she began, her voice trembling slightly. It's true that I am Countess Anastasia of Bukovina, but I did not flee a willing betrothal. I fled a forced marriage to a cruel man who saw me as nothing more than a means to increase his own power and wealth. Vlaicu's face contorted with rage. Lies! Your Majesty, surely you can see through this deception. This woman has been lying to you from the moment she arrived. Mihai's gaze never left Ana's face. Continue, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Ana nodded, drawing strength from Mihai's steady gaze. After my parents' death, Baron Vlaicu, as my nearest male relative, arranged a marriage contract without my consent. When I refused, She hesitated, the memories still painful. He threatened to have me committed to an asylum if I did not comply. So I ran. I left everything behind and came here, hoping to start a new life. The room fell silent as her words hung in the air. Mihai's face was unreadable, his eyes searching Ana's for any sign of deception. Vlaicu broke the silence with a harsh laugh. A touching tale, to be sure, but it changes nothing. She is still my betrothed by law, and I demand that she be returned to my custody immediately. Mihai rose from his desk, his voice cold with barely contained anger. You demand nothing in my castle, Baron Vlaicu. Countess Anastasia, Ana, is under my protection now. Vlaicu's eyes narrowed. Is that so? And what of her deception, your Majesty? She has lied to you, to everyone in this castle. How can you trust a word she says? Mihai turned to Ana, his expression softening slightly. Is there anything else you wish to tell me, Ana? Ana's heart pounded in her chest. This was her moment. Perhaps her only chance to salvage something from the wreckage of her deception. Only that I am deeply sorry for the lies I've told, she said, her voice gaining strength. I came here seeking safety and a new beginning. I never dreamed that I would find so much more. The kindness you've shown me, the trust you've placed in me, it has meant more than I can express. I understand if you can never forgive my deception, but please believe that my feelings, my actions since coming here, have been genuine. Mihai held her gaze for a long moment before turning back to Vlaicu. Baron, you will leave my castle immediately. I will have my advisors look into the legality of this alleged betrothal. Until then, the Countess remains here, under my protection. Vlaicu's face contorted with rage. This is not over, your Majesty. You have no right to interfere in the affairs of Bukovina nobility. I will return, and I will have what is rightfully mine. As guards escorted the fuming Baron from the room, Mihai turned back to Ana. The hurt and betrayal in his eyes made her heart ache. Your Majesty, she began, but Mihai held up a hand to stop her. Not now, Ana, or Countess Anastasia. I'm not even sure what to call you anymore. He sighed heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 42 years. I need time to process this. You will remain in the castle, but I think it best if we limit our interactions for now. Ana nodded, fighting back tears. I understand, your Majesty, and I am truly sorry for the pain I've caused you. As she turned to leave, Mihai's voice stopped her. Ana, why didn't you tell me? Did you not trust me? She looked back at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. It wasn't about trust, Mihai. I was afraid of Vlaicu finding me. Yes, but also afraid of losing the life I'd found here, the purpose, the happiness. She paused, gathering her courage. The love. Before Mihai could respond, Ana slipped out of the room, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the echoes of her confession. The days that followed were tense and uncertain. Ana was allowed to keep her position in the gardens, but she felt the weight of curious and sometimes hostile stares wherever she went. The other servants, once friendly, now kept their distance, unsure how to treat a countess in their midst. Mihai, true to his word, kept his distance. Ana caught glimpses of him from afar, on the castle ramparts, in the great hall during meals, but he never approached her. The loss of their easy companionship was a constant ache in her heart. One evening, about a week after the confrontation with Vlaicu, Ana was working late in the gardens, finding solace in the familiar tasks of pruning and weeding. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the grounds, she heard footsteps approaching. Looking up, she saw Mihai standing a few feet away, his expression unreadable in the fading light. "Your Majesty," she said, quickly rising and curtsying. "I was just finishing up. I'll leave you to enjoy the evening in peace." "Wait," Mihai said, his voice soft but firm. "Please, stay. I think it's time we talked." Ana's heart raced as Mihai gestured for her to join him on a nearby stone bench. As they sat, a respectful distance between them, the air seemed charged with unspoken words and emotions. "I've had a lot of time to think this past week," Mihai began, his eyes fixed on the distant mountains. "About trust and forgiveness and the nature of love." Ana held her breath, afraid to hope, but unable to quell the flutter in her chest. Mihai turned to face her, his eyes searching hers. "I won't pretend that your deception didn't hurt me, Ana. But I've come to realize that the woman I've grown to care for is not a lie. Your kindness, your wisdom, your gentle spirit, those things can't be faked." "Mihai," Ana whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "I never meant to hurt you. Everything I felt, everything I feel is real, more real than anything in my life before coming here." Mihai reached out, taking her hand in his. "I believe you, and I find that I can't imagine my life without you in it. But Ana, if we're to move forward, there can be no more secrets between us. Can you promise me that?" Ana squeezed his hand, tears of relief and joy spilling down her cheeks. "I promise, Mihai. No more secrets, no more lies, just us." As the last light of day faded, Mihai leaned in, his lips meeting Ana's in a soft, tender kiss. It was a moment of promise, of new beginnings, of a love that had weathered its first great storm and emerged stronger for it. But even as they sat there, lost in each other and the possibilities that lay ahead, neither could know of the challenges that still awaited them. Baron Vlaicu's threats lingered like storm clouds on the horizon, and the question of how a king and a countess turned gardener could build a future together in the rigid social structure of 19th century Romania loomed large. For now, though, in the quiet of the castle gardens, Mihai and Ana allowed themselves to hope, to dream, and to love, freely and without reservation for the first time. The weeks following Mihai and Ana's reconciliation in the garden were filled with a cautious joy. The castle seemed to breathe easier, as if the very stones were relieved by the resolution of tension between its master and the woman who had brought life back to its halls. However, the specter of Baron Vlaicu's threats and the complications of their differing stations loomed over their newfound happiness. One crisp morning, as frost glittered on the window panes, Mihai summoned Ana to his private study. She entered, her heart fluttering with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. "Ana," Mihai greeted her warmly, rising from behind his ornate desk. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." As she took her seat, Ana noticed the worry lines creasing Mihai's forehead. "Is everything all right, Your Majesty?" she asked, unconsciously slipping back into formality. Mihai's lips quirked in a small smile. "Mihai, remember? At least when we're alone." His expression grew serious again. "Ana, I've received word from my advisors regarding your situation with Baron Vlaicu." Ana's breath caught in her throat. "And?" she managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. Mihai sighed heavily, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "It's complicated. The betrothal contract, while morally reprehensible, appears to be legally binding under Bukovinian law. Vlaicu has petitioned the regional court to enforce it." Ana felt the room spin around her. "So, what does this mean? Am I to be forced back to him?" The very thought made her feel ill. Mihai moved swiftly to kneel beside her chair, taking her hands in his. No, my love, I won't let that happen. But we must tread carefully. Vlaicu has powerful allies, and this situation could escalate into a diplomatic incident between our regions if not handled delicately. Ana squeezed his hands, drawing strength from his touch. What can we do? Mihai stood pacing the room as he outlined their options. My legal advisors believe we may be able to challenge the contract on the grounds that it was signed under duress. But it will take time, and there's no guarantee of success. He paused, turning to face her with an intensity that made her breath catch. There is another option, one that would nullify the contract immediately. Anna's heart raced as she realized what he was implying. Mihai, are you suggesting? He crossed the room in 2 long strides, kneeling before her once more. Ana, Countess Anastasia of Bukovina, will you marry me? Not just to solve this legal tangle, but because I love you more deeply than I ever thought possible after losing my first wife. You've brought light back into my life, and I want to spend the rest of my days by your side. Tears sprang to Anna's eyes as she cupped Mihai's face in her hands. Oh, Mihai. Yes, 1,000 times yes. I love you with all my heart. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, sealing their commitment to each other. When they finally parted, both breathless and giddy with joy, Mihai's expression turned serious once more. Ana, you must understand what this means. Marrying me, it won't be easy. The court, the nobles, many will oppose this union. Are you prepared for the challenges we'll face? Ana straightened, her chin lifting with determination. I am. I've faced adversity before, Mihai. With you by my side, I can face anything. Mihai smiled, his eyes shining with pride and love. Then let's face it together, my queen. The news of King Mihai's engagement to the former gardener turned countess spread through the castle and beyond like wildfire. As predicted, reactions were mixed. Some of the staff, like Elena and Mrs. Popescu, were overjoyed, having witnessed the blossoming of Mihai and Anna's love firsthand. Others, particularly among the nobility, were less enthusiastic. That evening, as Mihai and Ana walked arm in arm through the castle gardens, now dormant under a light blanket of early snow, they overheard heated whispers from a group of visiting nobles. It's an outrage, one portly baron hissed. A king marrying a woman who posed as a servant? It's an insult to the crown. And what of her past? A countess added, her voice dripping with disdain. Who knows what other secrets she might be hiding? Ana stiffened at the words, but Mihai's arm tightened around her reassuringly. Pay them no mind, my love, he murmured. They'll come around in time. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with Vasile, Mihai's trusted advisor. The older man's face was grave as he approached. Your Majesty, my lady, he greeted them with a bow. I apologize for interrupting your evening, but there's an urgent matter that requires your attention. Mihai frowned. What is it, Vasile? The advisor glanced uneasily at Ana before continuing. We've received word that Baron Vlaicu is mobilizing his forces. It seems he's not content to wait for a legal resolution. Ana gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. He wouldn't dare attack the castle, would he? Vasile's expression was grim. I'm afraid it's a possibility we must consider, my lady. The Baron has always been known for his impulsive nature. Mihai's jaw clenched, his eyes flashing with anger. He goes too far. Vasile, summon the castle guard and send word to our allies. We must be prepared for any eventuality. As Vasile hurried away to carry out the king's orders, Mihai turned to Ana, his face softening with concern. Are you all right, my love? Ana took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. I'm scared, Mihai. Not for myself, but for you, for everyone in the castle. This is all because of me. Mihai cupped her face gently, his eyes fierce with determination. No, Ana. This is because of Vlaicu's cruelty and greed. You are not to blame for his actions. They made their way back to the castle, the weight of the impending threat heavy on their hearts. As they entered the great hall, they found it buzzing with activity. Servants scurried about, carrying armloads of supplies, while guards conferred in hushed tones. Mrs. Popescu approached them, her usually composed face creased with worry. "Your Majesty, my lady, what can we do to help?" Mihai smiled gratefully at the housekeeper. "Thank you, Mrs. Popescu. Please ensure that all non-essential staff are moved to the secure inner chambers, and see that we have ample provisions in case of a siege." As Mrs. Popescu hurried off to carry out the orders, Elena appeared at Anna's elbow. "My lady," she said, her young face determined, "some of us servants want to help with the defense. We may not be soldiers, but this is our home too." Anna felt a surge of affection for the loyal maid. "Thank you, Elena. Your bravery is commendable. Please speak with the captain of the guard. He'll know best how to utilize your skills." As the night wore on, the castle transformed into a hive of activity. Mihai and Ana worked tirelessly alongside their people, offering encouragement and direction where needed. In the armory, they found a group of kitchen staff receiving a crash course in basic swordplay from one of the senior guards. "Remember," the grizzled soldier was saying, "it's all in the wrist. You don't need to be the strongest, just the smartest." Mihai cleared his throat, drawing their attention. "Your dedication does you credit," he said, his voice ringing with authority. "But I want you all to remember, your lives are worth more than any battle. If the worst should happen, do not hesitate to surrender. We can rebuild walls and replace treasures, but we cannot replace you." A murmur of appreciation ran through the group, and Ana felt a swell of pride for her soon-to-be husband. This was the man she had fallen in love with, kind, compassionate, and deeply committed to his people. As dawn broke, casting a pale light over the snow-covered landscape, Mihai and Ana stood on the castle ramparts, surveying the quiet valley below. The air was crisp and still, belying the tension that thrummed through the castle. "What do you think will happen?" Ana asked softly, leaning into Mihai's warmth. He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "I don't know, my love, but whatever comes, we'll face it together." As if in answer to her question, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. Mihai's grip on Ana tightened as they watched the approaching column of riders, the morning sun glinting off their armor. "So it begins," Mihai murmured, his voice grim but resolute. Ana turned to him, her eyes shining with a mix of fear and determination. "Mihai, before whatever happens next, I want you to know that I don't regret a single moment. Meeting you, falling in love with you, it's been worth everything." Mihai cupped her face in his hands, his gaze intense. "Ana, my love, my queen, you are the best thing that has ever happened to me. Whatever trials we face them united." Their lips met in a passionate kiss, full of promise and defiance against the approaching storm. As they parted, the sound of hoofbeats grew louder, and a horn blast echoed across the valley. Mihai straightened, every inch the king as he called out to the guards below. "To your positions. Remember, we fight not just for stone and mortar, but for love, for justice, and for the right to choose our own destinies." A cheer went up from the castle defenders, their voices united in support of their king and his chosen queen. As Baron Vlaicu's forces drew nearer, Mihai and Ana stood hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. As Baron Vlaicu's forces drew closer to Bran Castle, the tension within its walls reached a fever pitch. King Mihai, standing tall on the ramparts with Ana by his side, watched the approaching army with a mixture of determination and concern etched on his face. "My love," he said, turning to Ana, "I want you to stay in the inner chambers where it's safest. I couldn't bear it if anything happened to you." Ana's eyes flashed with determination. "No, Mihai. My place is by your side. This is as much my fight as it is yours. We face this together, remember?" Mihai couldn't help but smile despite the gravity of the situation. "You're right, of course. Your courage never ceases to amaze me." As they descended from the ramparts to address the castle's defenders, they were met by Vasile, whose normally composed face was creased with worry. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing slightly, "the Baron's forces outnumber ours significantly. I fear we may not be able to hold out for long if they lay siege." Mihai's jaw set in determination. "We have righteousness on our side, Vasile, and the element of surprise. Have you put our plan into motion? Vasile nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Yes, sire. Elena and a group of servants have begun their mission. We can only pray they succeed. Ana looked between them, confusion evident on her face. What plan? What mission? Mihai took her hand, squeezing it gently. I'm sorry for not telling you sooner, my love. We've sent Elena and a group of our most trusted servants to sneak out of the castle through the secret tunnels. They're going to spread word to the neighboring villages and our allies about Vlaiku's treachery. With any luck, reinforcements will arrive before it's too late. Anna's eyes widened. That's brilliant, but also incredibly dangerous for Elena and the others. I hope they'll be safe. As do I, Mihai agreed solemnly. But they volunteered for this mission. Their bravery and loyalty are beyond measure. Just then, a horn blast echoed across the valley, signaling the arrival of Vlaiku's army at the castle gates. Mihai, Ana, and Vasile hurried to the great hall where the castle's defenders were gathered, a mix of trained guards and determined servants armed with whatever weapons they could find. Mihai addressed the crowd, his voice ringing with authority and conviction. My loyal subjects, the time has come to defend not just this castle, but the very ideals of justice and love that it represents. Baron Vlaiku seeks to tear apart what we have built together, to enforce his will through violence and intimidation, but we will not yield. A cheer went up from the assembled defenders, their faces set with grim determination. Mihai continued, Each of you has a crucial role to play. Guards, you know your positions. Servants, your knowledge of the castle's every nook and cranny will be invaluable. Work together, watch out for each other, and remember, we fight not just for stone and mortar, but for our right to choose our own destinies. As the defenders dispersed to their assigned positions, a messenger burst into the hall, breathless and wide-eyed. Your Majesty, the Baron demands an audience. He says he wishes to negotiate. Mihai and Ana exchanged a wary glance. Very well, Mihai said after a moment's consideration. We'll meet him at the gates, but be on your guard. This may be a trap. Flanked by a contingent of guards, Mihai and Ana made their way to the castle gates. On the other side stood Baron Vlaiku, his face twisted in a sneer of contempt. Ah, the love-struck king and his servant girl, Vlaiku called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm. How touching. I've come to offer you one last chance to surrender the Countess Anastasia to me, as is my right by law. Do so, and I'll spare your pitiful castle and its inhabitants. Mihai's eyes flashed with anger, but his voice remained steady. Your rights are based on coercion and lies, Baron. The Countess Anastasia is here of her own free will, and she has chosen to stay. More than that, she has chosen to become my queen. Vlaiku's face contorted with rage. You dare? A king marrying a woman who posed as a servant? It's an abomination. I'll see this castle razed to the ground before I allow such an insult to stand. Ana stepped forward, her voice ringing out clear and strong. The only abomination here, Baron, is your treatment of those you deem beneath you. I may have hidden my title, but I never hid my true self. Can you say the same? For a moment, Vlaiku seemed taken aback by Ana's boldness. Then his eyes narrowed dangerously. You'll regret those words, my dear. When this is over, I'll teach you the proper place of a wife, silent and obedient. Mihai's hand went to the hilt of his sword, his voice low and dangerous. You will never lay a hand on her, Vlaiku. I swear it on my crown and my life. Vlaiku sneered. Bold words from a man about to lose everything. You have until sundown to surrender the Countess. After that, we attack with no mercy. As Vlaiku turned to ride back to his troops, Mihai called out, And you, Baron, have until sundown to reconsider this foolish course of action. Ask yourself, is your pride worth the lives of your men? Back inside the castle, Mihai, Ana, and Vasile gathered in the war room to discuss their options. We need to buy more time, Vasile said, poring over a map of the castle and its surroundings. Our walls are strong, but if they bring siege engines, we won't last long. Ana's brow furrowed in thought. What if we could sabotage their siege equipment before they have a chance to use it? Mihai looked at her with a mixture of admiration and concern. That's a bold plan, my love. But how would we accomplish it without risking our own people? A sly smile spread across Ana's face. with a little bit of knowledge from my time as a servant. During my first weeks here, I explored every inch of these grounds. There's an old drainage tunnel that leads out beyond the castle walls. It's small, too small for soldiers to use, but perfect for a couple of agile servants to slip through. Vasile's eyes lit up. Yes, I remember those tunnels. They haven't been used in years, but if they're still passable... Mihai nodded slowly, a plan forming in his mind. It could work. We could send a small team to sneak out and sabotage their equipment under cover of darkness. I should go, Ana said firmly. I know the tunnels, and I have experience in moving unseen. Mihai's face paled. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. If you were caught... Ana took his hands in hers, her eyes pleading. Mihai, my love, this is our best chance. You know I'm right. For a long moment, Mihai said nothing, the internal struggle clear on his face. Finally, he sighed heavily. You're right, of course, but you're not going alone. I'm coming with you. Vasile started to protest, but Mihai held up a hand to silence him. No arguments, old friend. I won't send Ana into danger without being by her side. Besides, 2 sets of hands will work faster than 1. As night fell, Mihai and Ana prepared for their perilous mission. Dressed in dark, nondescript clothing, they made their way to the hidden entrance of the drainage tunnel, accompanied by Vasile and a small group of trusted guards. Remember, Vasile said in a hushed voice, your priority is to sabotage their siege equipment. If you can't manage that, at least try to gather information about their numbers and positions. And for heaven's sake, be careful. Mihai clasped Vasile's shoulder. We will, old friend. Hold the castle until we return. And if we don't... His voice trailed off, the unspoken possibility hanging heavy in the air. Vasile nodded solemnly. It has been an honor to serve you, your majesty. Both of you, he added, inclining his head to Ana. With final embraces exchanged, Mihai and Ana entered the tunnel, the darkness swallowing them as they embarked on their dangerous mission. The fate of the castle, and their future together, hung in the balance as they crept towards the enemy camp, guided only by moonlight and their unwavering love for each other. The night air was crisp and biting as Mihai and Ana emerged from the drainage tunnel, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The moon, partially obscured by clouds, cast eerie shadows across the landscape, providing just enough light for them to navigate without being easily spotted. We need to move quickly, Ana whispered, her eyes scanning the terrain. The siege engines will likely be at the rear of their camp. Mihai nodded, impressed once again by Ana's strategic thinking. Lead the way, my love. Your experience may well save us all tonight. They crept through the underbrush, their movements slow and deliberate to avoid making noise. As they neared the edge of Vlaiku's encampment, the sound of men's voices and the clanking of armor became more pronounced. Suddenly, Ana's hand shot out, grabbing Mihai's arm. Wait, she breathed, barely audible. Look there. Following her gaze, Mihai saw 2 large, menacing shapes looming in the darkness. Siege towers, not yet fully assembled, but clearly ready to pose a significant threat to the castle's defenses. We need to disable those first, Mihai murmured. Any ideas? Ana's mind raced, recalling everything she knew about siege equipment from her nobleman father's military lessons. The wheels, she said finally. If we can damage the axles or remove the linchpins, they'll be useless. With utmost caution, they made their way towards the siege towers. As they drew closer, they could see a pair of guards standing watch, their attention focused more on staying warm in the cold night air than on their surroundings. Mihai and Ana exchanged a glance, silently formulating a plan. Ana picked up a small stone and, with practiced aim, threw it into a nearby cluster of bushes. The resulting rustle caught the guards' attention, and they moved to investigate the sound. Seizing the opportunity, Mihai and Ana darted towards the siege towers. Working quickly and quietly, they began to sabotage the wheels, using small tools they had brought for this purpose. As Ana worked on one tower, she whispered, Mihai, I've been thinking. This plan of Vlaiku's, it seems rushed, almost desperate. Why would he risk so much on this attack? Mihai paused in his work, considering her words. You're right, it does seem unusually impulsive even for him. Perhaps there's more at stake than we realize. Their conversation was cut short by the sound of approaching footsteps. They quickly ducked behind the partially constructed siege tower, holding their breath as a group of soldiers passed by. "Did you hear?" one soldier was saying. "The Baron's in a right state. Apparently his creditors are breathing down his neck. If he doesn't secure the Countess and her land soon, he'll be ruined." Another soldier chuckled darkly. "Aye, and us with him, I'd wager. Let's hope this mad plan of his works, or we'll all be out on our ears." As the soldiers moved out of earshot, Mihai and Ana exchanged significant looks. "So that's it," Ana breathed. "He's not just after me. He's desperate to save himself from financial ruin." Mihai's jaw tightened. "Using you as a pawn in his economic games. The man's depravity knows no bounds." They finished their sabotage work quickly, then moved on to the catapults and other siege equipment, causing as much damage as they could without alerting the guards. As they worked, they overheard more snippets of conversation, piecing together a clearer picture of Vlaiku's dire situation and the dissatisfaction among his troops. Just as they were preparing to make their escape, a shout rang out across the camp. "Intruders! Sound the alarm!" Mihai grabbed Ana's hand. "Run!" he hissed, and they took off towards the tunnel entrance, their hearts pounding in their ears. Behind them, they could hear the camp erupting into chaos. Shouts, the clanging of armor, and the pounding of feet as soldiers gave chase. Ana led the way, her knowledge of the terrain proving invaluable as they dodged through the underbrush. Just as the tunnel entrance came into view, a group of soldiers burst out of the foliage in front of them, cutting off their escape route. Mihai drew his sword, pushing Ana behind him protectively. Well, came a coldly familiar voice. Baron Vlaiku stepped forward, his face twisted in a triumphant sneer. The gallant king and his little servant girl caught like rats in a trap. Mihai's grip on his sword tightened. "It's over, Vlaiku. We know about your financial troubles. How do you think your men will react when they learn they're risking their lives for your debts?" A flicker of uncertainty passed across Vlaiku's face, quickly replaced by rage. "Silence! You know nothing. Men, seize them!" As the soldiers advanced, Mihai prepared to fight, determined to protect Ana at all costs. But before the first blow could be struck, a horn blast echoed across the valley, followed by the thundering of hooves. All heads turned to see a large force cresting the hill, banners flying in the pre-dawn light. At their head rode Elena, her face fierce and determined. "The king's allies!" someone shouted, and suddenly the air was filled with the clash of steel on steel, as the reinforcements engaged Vlaiku's troops. In the confusion, Mihai and Ana made a dash for the tunnel entrance. Just as they reached it, Mihai felt a searing pain in his side. He stumbled and Ana caught him, her face pale with fear. "Mihai, you're hurt!" He gritted his teeth against the pain. "It's nothing. We need to get back to the castle." Supporting each other, they made their way through the tunnel, emerging on the castle side to find Vasile and a group of guards waiting anxiously. "Your Majesty, my lady!" Vasile exclaimed, relief evident in his voice. "Thank heavens you're safe, but you're injured, sire." As they were ushered inside and Mihai's wound was tended to, reports began to flood in. The reinforcements, rallied by Elena's impassioned pleas to the neighboring villages, had taken Vlaiku's forces by surprise. Many of the Baron's men, learning of his true motives, had thrown down their arms and surrendered. In the great hall, as dawn broke over the castle, Mihai and Ana stood hand in hand, receiving the news of their victory. Elena, disheveled but proud, knelt before them. "Rise, Elena," Mihai said warmly. "Your bravery and quick thinking have saved us all. You shall be rewarded handsomely for your service." Elena rose, her eyes shining. "Thank you, Your Majesty, but I did only what anyone would do for a king and queen so beloved." Ana embraced the young maid, tears in her eyes. "You've proven yourself a true friend and hero, Elena. Thank you." As the castle celebrated their unlikely victory, Mihai turned to Ana, his eyes full of love and admiration. "My darling, you are magnificent out there. Your courage, your cleverness, I am in awe of you." Ana smiled, reaching up to caress his cheek. "We did this together, Mihai, as we'll do everything from now on." Their lips met in a tender kiss, the first rays of sunlight streaming through the windows. heralding not just a new day, but a new chapter in their lives and the history of their kingdom. But even as they reveled in their triumph, both Mihai and Ana knew that challenges still lay ahead. The nobles who had opposed their union would need to be won over. The legal entanglements of Ana's past would need to be fully resolved. And there was the matter of Baron Vlaiku's fate to be decided. For now, though, they allowed themselves this moment of joy and relief. They had faced their first great test as a couple and emerged victorious. Whatever the future held, they would face it as they had faced this crisis, together with love and determination as their strongest weapons. As the celebrations continued around them, Mihai led Ana to a quiet corner of the hall. "My love," he said softly, taking both her hands in his. "After all we've been through, I find I don't want to wait any longer. Marry me. Not in some grand ceremony weeks from now, but today, here, in front of those who stood by us in our darkest hour." Ana's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with emotion. "Yes," she breathed. 1,000 times yes. And so, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting its warm light over Bran Castle, King Mihai and his beloved Ana exchanged their vows. It was not the lavish royal wedding that protocol might have demanded, but a simple, heartfelt ceremony witnessed by those who had fought alongside them, nobles and servants alike. As Mihai slipped a ring onto Ana's finger, a family heirloom he had kept close to his heart, he spoke words that resonated with everyone present. "With this ring, I pledge not just my love, but my commitment to a new era. An era where worth is measured not by titles or wealth, but by the content of one's character. Ana, my love, my queen, together we will build a kingdom where everyone, regardless of their station, has the chance to rise on their own merits, just as you have done." Ana, her eyes shining with tears of joy, responded in kind. "And I pledge to stand by your side, to support you in this vision, and to love you through whatever challenges we may face. Our love has already conquered so much. Together, there is nothing we cannot overcome." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, a cheer went up from the assembled crowd. In that moment, it didn't matter who had been born noble and who had not. They were united in their joy for the royal couple and their hope for the future. The day that had begun in darkness and danger ended in light and celebration. And as night fell once more over Bran Castle, Mihai and Ana stood on the ramparts, looking out over their kingdom. The challenges ahead were many, but with their love, their determination, and the loyalty of those who had stood with them, they faced the future with hope and courage. Their story, which had begun with a chance encounter in a garden, had blossomed into something greater than either of them could have imagined. It was a tale of love conquering all obstacles, of bravery in the face of adversity, and of the power of staying true to oneself. And it was a story that would be told and retold throughout their kingdom for generations to come. The days following the dramatic battle and impromptu royal wedding were a whirlwind of activity at Bran Castle. As the dust settled and the last of Baron Vlaiku's defeated forces retreated, Mihai and Ana found themselves facing a new set of challenges. The castle buzzed with a mixture of excitement and apprehension as nobles from across the kingdom arrived to pay their respects and to size up their new queen. One crisp morning, as sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of the great hall, Mihai and Ana sat side by side on their thrones, preparing to receive a delegation of influential nobles. Ana, resplendent in a gown of deep burgundy velvet, fidgeted nervously with her new wedding ring. Mihai reached over, placing his hand over hers. "Are you ready for this, my love?" he asked softly, his eyes full of concern and admiration. Ana took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied with a small smile. "It's just strange. Yesterday I was planting tulips in the garden. Today I'm a queen about to face some of the most powerful people in the kingdom." Mihai chuckled, bringing her hand to his lips for a gentle kiss. "And you'll face them with the same grace and strength you've shown in everything else. Remember, you've earned this position not just through our love, but through your own merit and courage." Their intimate moment was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Vasily appeared at the entrance to the hall, looking slightly harried. "Your Majesties," he announced with a bow, "the delegation from the eastern provinces has arrived." Mihai nodded, his face settling into a mask of regal composure. "Show them in, Vasily." As the doors swung open, a group of richly dressed nobles entered, their faces a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. At their head was Countess Eleonora, a formidable woman in her 60s known for her sharp tongue and even sharper political acumen. "Your Majesties," Eleonora said, dropping into a curtsy that was just a fraction too shallow to be entirely respectful, "we've come to offer our congratulations on your recent nuptials." Mihai's voice was warm but firm as he responded. "We thank you for your good wishes, Countess Eleonora. We trust you and your companions had a pleasant journey." "Pleasant enough," Eleonora replied, her keen eyes fixed on Ana. "Though I must say, we were all quite surprised by the news. It's not every day a king marries his gardener after all." A tense silence fell over the hall. Ana felt her cheeks flush, but she held her head high, meeting Eleonora's gaze steadily. "Indeed, Countess," she said, her voice clear and confident, "just as it's not every day a gardener turns out to be a countess in disguise. Life is full of surprises, wouldn't you agree?" A ripple of murmurs ran through the assembled nobles. Eleonora's eyebrows rose slightly, a flicker of grudging respect crossing her face. "Indeed it is, Your Majesty. Perhaps you'd care to enlighten us on how a Countess of Bukovina came to be tending roses in Bran Castle?" Mihai started to interject, but Ana laid a gentle hand on his arm. "It's all right, my love," she said softly, before turning back to address the nobles. "It's a fair question, and one you all deserve an answer to." Taking a deep breath, Ana recounted her story, her flight from Baron Vlaiku's cruelty, her decision to hide her identity, and the unexpected love she had found with Mihai. As she spoke, her voice grew stronger, filled with the conviction of her experiences. "I may not have been born to this role," she concluded, her gaze sweeping across the assembled nobles, "but I have lived among your people. I have worked alongside them, shared their joys and sorrows. I understand their needs and their hopes in a way few in our position ever have the chance to. And I intend to use that understanding to help build a better kingdom for all of us." A heavy silence fell over the hall as Ana finished speaking. Then, to everyone's surprise, it was Eleonora who broke it. The older woman stepped forward, her face softened by something that might have been admiration. "Well spoken, Your Majesty," she said, dropping into a deeper, more sincere curtsy. "Perhaps there is more to you than meets the eye. I, for one, look forward to seeing what changes you and His Majesty will bring to our kingdom." As the other nobles murmured their agreement, some more enthusiastically than others, Mihai rose from his throne. "Thank you, Countess Eleonora, and all of you, for your open minds and hearts. We have much to discuss about the future of our kingdom, but first, let us adjourn for a feast to celebrate new beginnings and newfound understandings." As the nobles filed out of the hall, led by Vasily to the banquet room, Mihai turned to Ana, his eyes shining with pride. "You were magnificent, my love," he said, drawing her into a warm embrace. "I do believe you've won them over, or at least given them something to think about." Ana laughed softly, relaxing into his arms. "It's a start, at least, but we have a long road ahead of us, Mihai. There will be more challenges to face. And we'll face them together," he replied, kissing her forehead gently. "Now, shall we join our guests? I believe we have a feast to host." As they made their way to the banquet hall, arm in arm, they were met by Elena, who was practically bouncing with excitement. "Your Majesties?" she exclaimed, remembering at the last moment to drop into a quick curtsy. "I hope I'm not interrupting, but there's something you need to see." Intrigued, Mihai and Ana followed Elena to one of the castle's large windows overlooking the courtyard. To their amazement, they saw a crowd gathered below, not nobles or soldiers, but common folk from the surrounding villages. Many held banners or flowers, and a cheer went up as they caught sight of the royal couple. "They've been arriving all morning," Elena explained, her eyes shining. "Word has spread about how you two fought off Baron Vlaiku, and about the Queen's background. They're calling you the People's Monarchs." Ana felt tears prick at her eyes as she looked out at the sea of smiling faces. "Oh, Mihai," she breathed. "Look at them. They've come all this way." Mihai squeezed her hand, his own eyes misty. "Then we shouldn't keep them waiting, should we? Come, my love. Let's greet our people." Together, they made their way down to the courtyard, the cheers growing louder as they appeared. As they walked among the crowd, shaking hands and accepting flowers, Ana felt a sense of purpose settle over her. This was why they had fought so hard, not just for their own love, but for the chance to make a real difference in the lives of these people. An old woman pressed forward, grasping Ana's hand in her gnarled fingers. "Bless you, Your Majesty," she said, her voice quavering with emotion. "My granddaughter says she wants to be just like you when she grows up, strong and kind and not afraid to get her hands dirty." Ana felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you," she managed to say, squeezing the woman's hand gently. "Please tell your granddaughter that she can be anything she sets her mind to. That's the kingdom we're going to build together." As the day wore on, Mihai and Ana moved between two worlds, the formal discussions with the nobles in the castle and the joyous celebrations with the common folk in the courtyard. It was exhausting, but exhilarating, and as night fell, they found themselves once again on the castle ramparts, looking out over their kingdom. "What a day," Ana sighed, leaning against Mihai's strong shoulder. "I don't think I've ever felt so tired or so alive." Mihai wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. "And it's only the beginning, my love. We have so much work ahead of us, so many changes to make. But seeing those people today, hearing their hopes, it makes it all worthwhile, doesn't it?" Ana nodded, a smile playing on her lips. "It does. You know, when I first came here, hiding who I was, I never dreamed I'd end up in this position. But now I can't imagine being anywhere else, doing anything else." Mihai turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Nor can I imagine ruling without you by my side. You bring a perspective, a wisdom that this kingdom has long needed. Together, we'll build something truly remarkable." As they sealed their commitment with a tender kiss, the stars began to twinkle overhead, witnesses to the love and dedication of Bran Castle's unlikely royal couple. The road ahead would not be easy. There were still those who opposed their union, still challenges to face and obstacles to overcome. But with their love for each other and their people to guide them, Mihai and Ana were ready to face whatever the future might bring. In the years to come, their reign would be remembered as a golden age, a time of progress, compassion, and hope. And it all began with a chance encounter in a garden, proof that sometimes the most beautiful flowers can bloom in the most unexpected places. The dawn broke over Bran Castle, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. Inside the royal chambers, King Mihai stirred, his eyes opening to find Ana already awake, gazing out the window at the misty mountains beyond. "Good morning, my love," he said softly, his voice still husky with sleep. "You're up early." Ana turned, a tender smile gracing her lips. "Good morning. I couldn't sleep. There's so much to do, so many preparations to make." Mihai rose from the bed, crossing the room to wrap his arms around her. "The coronation ceremony?" Ana nodded, leaning into his embrace. "It's not just that, it's everything. The nobles are still divided, the common folk are expecting miracles, and we've yet to fully address the situation with Baron Vlaicu." Mihai sighed, resting his chin on top of her head. "One step at a time, my dear. Today we focus on the coronation. It's an opportunity to show the kingdom our unity and strength." As they dressed for the day, there was a knock at the door. Elena entered, carrying a tray of breakfast and a stack of messages. "Good morning, Your Majesties," she said, curtsying. "I've brought your breakfast and the morning reports." "Thank you, Elena," Ana said warmly. "Any news we should be aware of immediately?" Elena hesitated, then nodded. "There are rumors, Your Majesty. Some say Baron Vlaicu has been seen near the border, gathering supporters." Mihai's brow furrowed. "I thought we had him under guard." "He escaped, sire," Elena replied, her voice low. "The news came late last night. Captain Radu didn't want to disturb you, but he's waiting to give a full report when you're ready." Ana and Mihai exchanged worried glances. "Thank you, Elena," Mihai said. "Please inform Captain Radu we'll meet him in the war room within the hour." As Elena left, Ana sank into a chair, her face pale. Vlaicu free. This could jeopardize everything we've worked for. Mihai knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. We faced him before and we'll face him again. But right now, we need to focus on the coronation. It's more important than ever to show a united front. Ana nodded, steeling herself. "You're right. We can't let fear rule us. We'll deal with Vlaicu when the time comes." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of activity. Mihai met with Captain Radu, issuing orders to strengthen the borders and track Vlaicu's movements. Ana oversaw the final preparations for the coronation, working closely with Mrs. Popescu to ensure every detail was perfect. As midday approached, the castle was abuzz with excitement. Nobles from across the kingdom had arrived, filling the great hall with a sea of colorful gowns and gleaming jewelry. Commoners gathered in the courtyard, eager for a glimpse of their new queen. In a small antechamber off the great hall, Ana stood before a full-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman who stared back at her. She wore a gown of deep blue silk embroidered with gold thread in intricate patterns of Romanian folklore. A delicate tiara rested atop her dark hair, which had been styled in an elegant updo. "You look beautiful, Your Majesty," Elena said softly, adjusting the train of Ana's gown. Ana smiled at her friend's reflection in the mirror. "Thank you, Elena, for everything. I couldn't have made it this far without your support." There was a gentle knock at the door, and Mihai entered, resplendent in his royal regalia. His breath caught as he saw Ana. "My love," he whispered, crossing the room to take her hands. "You are a vision." Ana felt tears prick at her eyes. "Mihai, I'm scared. What if I'm not ready for this?" Mihai cupped her face gently. "You are more than ready. Your strength, your compassion, your wisdom. These are the qualities of a true queen. Our people will see that, just as I do." Their moment was interrupted by Vasile, who appeared at the door. "Your Majesties, it's time." Taking a deep breath, Ana squeezed Mihai's hand. "Together?" "Always," he replied with a reassuring smile. They made their way to the great hall, where the assembled nobles fell silent as they entered. Ana could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes upon her as she walked beside Mihai toward the dais where the archbishop waited. The coronation ceremony was a blur of ancient rituals and solemn vows. Ana knelt before the archbishop, her heart pounding as he placed the heavy crown upon her head. "Rise, Queen Ana of Romania," the archbishop intoned. "May you rule with wisdom, justice, and compassion." As Ana stood, facing the crowd for the first time as their crowned queen, a hush fell over the hall. Then, from somewhere in the back, a voice cried out, "Long live the queen!" The cry was taken up by others, growing in volume until it filled the hall. "Long live the queen! Long live King Mihai!" Ana felt overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. She turned to Mihai, who was beaming with pride, and together they raised their hands to acknowledge their subjects. As the cheers continued, Ana leaned close to Mihai. "We did it," she whispered. "No, my love," he replied softly. "You did it. You've won them over, just as you won me." The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of celebrations. There was a grand feast where nobles and commoners alike were invited to dine in the castle courtyards. Ana and Mihai moved among their people, listening to their concerns and hopes for the future. As night fell, fireworks lit up the sky over Bran Castle, their colorful bursts reflecting in the waters of the moat. Ana and Mihai stood on the balcony, waving to the cheering crowds below. "What a day," Ana sighed, leaning against Mihai's shoulder. "I can hardly believe it's real." Mihai wrapped an arm around her waist. "Believe it, my queen. This is just the beginning of our reign. Together, we'll build a kingdom of justice and prosperity for all our people." As they turned to go back inside, a guard approached, his face grave. "Your Majesties, forgive the interruption. We've received word from our scouts. Baron Vlaicu has been spotted gathering forces near the western border. It seems he's preparing to make a move." The joy of the moment was tempered by this sobering news. Ana and Mihai exchanged determined looks. Thank you, Mihai said to the guard. Double the patrols and send word to our allies. We must be prepared for whatever Vlaicu has planned. As the guard hurried off, Ana squared her shoulders. So, our first test as rulers comes sooner than we expected. Mihai nodded, his eyes flashing with determination. Indeed. But we've faced worse odds before, my love. Whatever Vlaicu throws at us, we'll face it together. Hand in hand, they walked back into the castle, leaving behind the celebrations and facing the challenges that lay ahead. The crown might have been placed on Ana's head that day, but the true test of their reign was just beginning. The days following Ana's coronation were a whirlwind of activity at Bran Castle. The euphoria of the celebration quickly gave way to the sobering reality of Baron Vlaicu's looming threat. King Mihai and Queen Ana found themselves thrust into a delicate balancing act, striving to present a united and strong front to their people while frantically preparing for the possibility of another attack. On a particularly chilly morning, Mihai and Ana convened an emergency council meeting in the war room. The air was thick with tension as they gathered around a large map of the kingdom, markers indicating the last known positions of Vlaicu's forces. Your Majesties, Captain Radu began, his weathered face creased with concern. Our scouts report that Vlaicu has amassed a force of nearly 2,000 men near the western border. They appear to be well armed and supplied. Ana leaned in, studying the map intently. How does this compare to our own forces, Captain? Radu hesitated before responding. We have approximately 1,500 men at arms, Your Majesty, but many are still recovering from our previous encounter with the Baron. Mihai's jaw tightened. And what of our allies? Have we received any responses to our calls for aid? Vasile, who had been quietly taking notes in the corner, stepped forward. We've had mixed responses, sire. Some of our neighboring kingdoms have pledged support, but others are hesitant. It seems Vlaicu has been spreading rumors, questioning the legitimacy of Queen Ana's claim to the throne. Ana felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She turned to Mihai, her voice low but steady. Perhaps I should abdicate. If it would prevent bloodshed. Absolutely not, Mihai interrupted, his voice firm. He took Ana's hand, squeezing it reassuringly. You are the rightful queen, chosen by me and accepted by our people. We will not let Vlaicu's lies and threats undermine what we've built. Ana nodded, drawing strength from Mihai's unwavering support. She addressed the council, her voice growing stronger with each word. Gentlemen, we may be outnumbered, but we have something Vlaicu and his mercenaries lack, a cause worth fighting for. We fight not just for a crown, but for the future of our kingdom and the well-being of our people. The council members nodded in agreement, their faces showing a mixture of admiration and resolve. What do you propose, Your Majesty? Asked Lord Dragos, an elderly advisor who had initially been skeptical of Ana, but had come to respect her quick mind and compassionate nature. Ana studied the map for a moment before responding. We need to buy time. Captain Radu, can we fortify the passes leading from the western border? If we can funnel Vlaicu's forces into narrow channels, it might negate their numerical advantage. Captain Radu's eyes lit up with approval. An excellent strategy, Your Majesty. We can use the terrain to our advantage, setting up ambush points along the way. Mihai nodded, a proud smile playing on his lips. Good thinking, Ana. Vasile, draft messages to our allies. Emphasize that any support they can offer will be remembered and reciprocated. We need to present a united front against Vlaicu's aggression. As the council dispersed to carry out their orders, Mihai and Ana remained in the war room, the weight of their responsibilities heavy on their shoulders. You were magnificent, my love, Mihai said softly, drawing Ana into a gentle embrace. Your strategic mind never ceases to amaze me. Ana leaned into his warmth, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability. I'm terrified, Mihai. Not for myself, but for our people. How many lives will be lost because of one man's greed and ambition? Mihai pulled back slightly, cupping Ana's face in his hands. We will do everything in our power to minimize the loss of life. But remember, my dear, this fight is not of our choosing. Vlaicu forces our hand, and we must protect our kingdom and our people. Ana nodded, her resolve strengthening. You're right, of course. We cannot back down now. Too much is at stake. As they left the war room, they were met by Elena, who curtsied hastily before speaking. Your Majesties, there's a situation in the courtyard. A group of villagers has arrived asking to speak with you. Exchanging concerned glances, Mihai and Ana made their way to the castle's main entrance. As they stepped out onto the steps, they were met by a crowd of about 50 villagers, their faces etched with worry and determination. An older man, his weathered hands clutching a worn cap, stepped forward and bowed awkwardly. Your Majesties, we've come to offer our services. We may not be trained soldiers, but we can swing an axe or wield a pitchfork. This is our home too, and we want to defend it. Ana felt a lump form in her throat at this display of loyalty. She descended the steps, Mihai at her side, to address the villagers directly. My good people, she began, her voice carrying across the courtyard, your bravery and devotion touch us deeply, but we cannot in good conscience ask you to risk your lives in battle. A murmur of protest rose from the crowd, but Ana held up her hand, silencing them gently. However, there are other ways you can serve the kingdom in this time of need. We require supplies, fortifications, and support for the families of our soldiers. Will you help us in these tasks? The old man who had spoken nodded vigorously. Aye, Your Majesty, whatever you need, we'll do it. Just tell us how we can help. Mihai stepped forward, his voice ringing with authority and gratitude. Your loyalty will not be forgotten. Report to Captain Radu for assignments. Together we will defend our home and our way of life. As the villagers dispersed, their spirits lifted by the royal couple's words, Ana turned to Mihai. Their courage is inspiring. It reminds me why we fight. Mihai nodded, a determined glint in his eye. Indeed, and it gives me an idea. Come, let's return to the war room. I think I know how we can turn the tide in our favor. Back in the war room, Mihai outlined his plan to the council. We've been thinking too conventionally, he explained, moving markers across the map. Vlaicu expects us to meet him in open battle. But what if we could use our people's loyalty against him? Ana's eyes widened as she grasped Mihai's strategy. A network of resistance throughout the kingdom, she breathed. Villages providing intelligence, disrupting supply lines, misdirecting Vlaicu's forces. Mihai grinned, pleased that Ana had caught on so quickly. Exactly. We may not have the numbers for a traditional army, but we have something far more powerful, the love and support of our people. The council members exchanged excited glances, the mood in the room shifting from grim determination to cautious optimism. It's risky, Captain Radu admitted, but it just might work. We'll need to coordinate carefully, establish secret communication channels. I can help with that. Elena piped up from her position by the door. All eyes turned to her and she blushed but continued bravely. I mean, the servants' network. We have ways of passing messages that even the nobles don't know about. We could use that. Ana beamed at her friend. Brilliant, Elena. You'll work directly with Captain Radu on this. Your knowledge will be invaluable. As the council delved into the details of their unconventional defense strategy, Ana felt a renewed sense of hope. She caught Mihai's eye across the table, and they shared a smile of understanding. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, with the strength of their love and the support of their people behind them. The next few days were a flurry of activity as their plan was put into motion. Messengers were dispatched to villages across the kingdom, carrying coded instructions. The castle became a hub of covert operations, with Elena coordinating a network of servants who relayed information in whispers and hidden notes. As night fell on the eve of Vlaicu's expected attack, Mihai and Ana stood on the castle ramparts, looking out over the peaceful valley below. The air was crisp with the promise of winter, and a blanket of stars twinkled overhead. Whatever happens tomorrow, Ana said softly, leaning into Mihai's embrace, I want you to know that I have no regrets. Meeting you, falling in love, becoming your queen, it's been worth every hardship. Mihai tightened his arms around her, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. Nor do I have any regrets, my love. You've brought light and purpose back into my life. No matter what Vlaicu throws at us, we'll face it together. As they stood there, drawing strength from each other, and the quiet beauty of the night. Neither could know the challenges that awaited them with the dawn. But in that moment, surrounded by the love of each other and the loyalty of their people, they felt ready to face whatever the future might bring. The dawn broke over Bran Castle, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. King Mihai and Queen Ana stood on the ramparts, their hands clasped tightly as they watched the sun rise over their kingdom. The air was crisp and still, belying the tension that thrummed through the castle and the surrounding countryside. "It's time," Mihai said softly, giving Ana's hand a gentle squeeze. "Are you ready?" Ana took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Let's face this together, my love." They made their way to the great hall, where their advisors and military leaders were already gathered. Captain Radu approached, bowing deeply. "Your Majesties," he said, his voice grave. "Our scouts report that Baron Vlaiku's forces are on the move. They'll reach the western passes by midday." Mihai nodded, his face set with determination. "And our defenses?" "In place, sire," Radu replied. "The villagers have done an exceptional job preparing the ambush points and false trails. Elena's network of informants is ready to feed misinformation to Vlaiku's scouts." Ana stepped forward, addressing the room. "Remember, our strength lies not in numbers, but in the loyalty and ingenuity of our people. Each of you has a crucial role to play in the coming hours. Trust in our plan, trust in each other, and we will prevail." A murmur of agreement ran through the assembled leaders. Mihai couldn't help but feel a surge of pride at Ana's natural leadership. She had come so far from the gardener he had first met, yet her compassion and connection to the common people remained her greatest strength. As the morning wore on, reports began to filter in from their network of spies and village lookouts. Vlaiku's army was indeed massive, but already they were falling for the false trails and misinformation planted by Ana and Mihai's loyal subjects. "Your Majesty!" Elena burst into the war room, her face flushed with excitement. "We've just received word from the village of Moyesiu. Vlaiku's advance guard stumbled into the pit traps they prepared. At least 50 men and horses are out of commission." Ana's eyes lit up. "Excellent work. Make sure the villagers are rewarded for their bravery. And Elena, thank you for your tireless efforts. We couldn't have done this without you." Elena blushed at the praise, curtsying deeply before hurrying off to relay more messages. As midday approached, tension in the castle reached a fever pitch. Mihai and Ana stood side by side in the courtyard, addressing the gathered soldiers and volunteers. "My brave friends," Mihai began, his voice ringing out clear and strong. "The moment we have prepared for is upon us. Baron Vlaiku thinks he can bully and intimidate his way to power, but he underestimates the strength of a united kingdom." Ana stepped forward, her eyes blazing with passion. "Each of you, whether noble or commoner, soldier or farmer, is a vital part of our defense. Your courage, your loyalty, your love for this land, these are weapons that Vlaiku cannot hope to match. Together, we will show him the true power of a people united." A cheer went up from the assembled crowd, their faces alight with determination and hope. As Mihai and Ana made their way back into the castle, they were stopped by Lord Dragos, the elderly advisor who had initially been skeptical of their union. "Your Majesties," he said, bowing deeply, I owe you an apology. I doubted the wisdom of your marriage, but I see now that together you are precisely what this kingdom needs. Your strength, your compassion, your ability to unite people from all walks of life. It's remarkable." Ana smiled warmly, reaching out to clasp the old man's hand. "Thank you, Lord Dragos. Your support means more than you know. Together we will build a kingdom where everyone's voice is valued, regardless of their station." As the afternoon wore on, reports continued to pour in. Vlaiku's forces were being harassed at every turn. Ambushes in narrow passes, false information leading them into swamps, supplies mysteriously spoiling or disappearing. The Baron's frustration was palpable even from a distance. In the war room, Mihai and Ana pored over maps, adjusting their strategy as new information came in. Suddenly, a commotion outside caught their attention. They rushed to the window to see a rider galloping into the courtyard, his horse lathered with sweat. Captain Radu burst into the room moments later, his face flushed with excitement. Your Majesties, we've received word from our allies. The kingdoms of Moldova and Wallachia have decided to support us. Their forces are moving to cut off Vlaiku's retreat. A cheer went up from everyone in the room. Mihai pulled Ana into a tight embrace, his heart soaring with hope. This could be the turning point, my love, he whispered. With our allies at our back, Vlaiku will have no choice but to surrender or face total defeat. Ana's eyes shone with unshed tears of relief and joy. Our people's bravery and your brilliant strategy have brought us to this moment, Mihai. I'm so proud of what we've accomplished together. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the land, a horn blast echoed across the valley. Mihai and Ana rushed to the ramparts, their hearts pounding. In the distance, they could see Vlaiku's army in disarray, caught between the ingenious traps and ambushes set by the villagers and the approaching forces of their allies. Baron Vlaiku approaches under a flag of truce, Captain Radu reported, joining them on the wall. He requests an audience, Your Majesties. Mihai and Ana exchanged a look of grim satisfaction. Very well, Mihai said. Have him brought to the Great Hall. It's time to end this once and for all. The Great Hall was silent as Baron Vlaiku was led in, his once pristine uniform now muddy and torn. His face was a mask of barely contained rage as he was forced to kneel before Mihai and Ana. So, he spat, glaring up at them. You've won. Are you happy now playing at being rulers? You, a soft-hearted fool, he said to Mihai. And you, a common-born pretender. He sneered at Ana. Mihai's hand tightened on the arm of his throne, but Ana laid a gentle hand on his arm. She rose, her voice calm but steely as she addressed Vlaiku. You're wrong, Baron. We're not playing at anything. We are the rulers our people need and deserve. Unlike you, we understand that true strength comes not from intimidation and force, but from unity and compassion. She descended the steps of the dais, standing directly before Vlaiku. I may not have been born to wear this crown, but I have earned it through love, sacrifice, and a genuine desire to serve our people. Can you say the same? Vlaiku's face contorted with fury, but before he could respond, Mihai spoke. Baron Vlaiku, for your crimes against the crown and the people of this kingdom, you are hereby stripped of your titles and lands. You will be imprisoned until such time as we determine a suitable punishment for your treachery. As Vlaiku was led away, his shoulders slumped in defeat, a cheer went up from the assembled courtiers and servants. Mihai stood, taking Ana's hand and raising it high. My friends, he called out, his voice ringing with emotion. Today marks not just a victory over one man's greed and ambition, but the dawn of a new era for our kingdom. Together, we have proven that the bonds of love, loyalty, and common purpose are stronger than any army. Ana stepped forward, her eyes shining. From this day forward, let it be known that in this kingdom, every voice matters. Noble or commoner, rich or poor, we are all united in our love for this land and its people. Together, we will build a future of prosperity, justice, and compassion for all. The cheers that followed were deafening, echoing through the castle and beyond. As night fell, bonfires were lit across the kingdom in celebration. Mihai and Ana stood on the balcony of their chambers, looking out over the jubilant crowds. We did it, my love, Mihai said softly, drawing Ana close. Against all odds, we've secured our kingdom and our future together. Ana turned in his arms, her face radiant with joy and love. And it's only the beginning, Mihai. We have so much work ahead of us, so many changes to make. But together, I know we can accomplish anything. As they sealed their triumph with a tender kiss, the stars twinkled overhead, bearing witness to the love that had conquered all obstacles. In the years to come, the reign of King Mihai and Queen Ana would be remembered as a golden age of progress, compassion, and unity. Their story would be told and retold, a testament to the power of love to transform not just two lives, but an entire kingdom. And it all began with a chance encounter in a garden, proving that sometimes the most beautiful flowers bloom in the most unexpected places.